We have 4 o'clock on the clock, so we'll call this meeting to order. We'll start with the emergency evacuation procedure. If we should encounter an emergency situation, please exit the building. There's 2 sets of doors off of the lobby, and if for some reason those exits aren't available, there's another set of doors behind council chambers. The muster point is located near the gazebo in Lions Park, and if we're evacuated for any reason, we will not re-enter the building until we're given an all clear from staff. Thank you. Next, Councillor Bilodeau, we have a land acknowledgement.
The town of Sylvan Lake respectfully acknowledges that the land on which we gather is Treaty 6 territory, home to the Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3. These lands are traditional meeting grounds, gathering places, and travel routes for many nations, including the Cree, Dene, Blackfoot, Métis, Saulteaux, and Nakota Sioux. We are grateful for the traditional knowledge keepers and elders who are still with us today and those who have gone on before us. We acknowledge and thank all of the many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit whose footsteps have marked these lands for centuries.
Thank you, Councillor Bilodeau. Next, we'll move into open microphone. Open microphone is an opportunity for a member of the public to express his or her feedback on an issue pertaining to the town. We're limited to a maximum of 15 minutes, and each speaker is limited to a maximum of 5 minutes. After the presentation, members of council will ask only questions of clarification, and you will not receive a response or feedback from council immediately after your presentation. Items that require a response will be brought forward at a future date. So we do have one person signed up, Ms. Morse. Welcome. You can come settle up here. There's a... Please do. Without the microphone, we can't hear you. If you can start by just pressing the button in the center of the microphone, you'll see a countdown clock over here. When it's finished, you'll hear a whole bunch of beeps, and then we are ready to hear from you. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Mayor and the Town Council of Sylvan Lake. This is about the opening public buildings for the Free Alberta petition, and I handed every one of you, or I was handed, so that if you have any questions, you have it available. I'm writing to request permission for people to canvass for approved Elections Alberta petitions in our public buildings. Our local buildings, such as the Town Hall and community centres, are funded by the people who live here. These places should function as a town square where everyone can discuss new ideas. I believe it is important for our leaders to make sure these spaces stay open for citizens to meet and talk. Our democracy is built on people talking and sharing their opinions. Our current Prime Minister, Mark Carney, has said that democracy is not a spectator sport. It's required the active participation of every citizen to ensure that decisions we make today reflect the values of tomorrow, which means we should not just sit back and watch. We need to be involved. If we aren't allowed to discuss the most important issues of our time in our own public buildings, it makes it very hard for us to do our jobs as citizens. I believe it is wrong to keep peaceful canvassers of Elections Alberta approved petitions out of these buildings. When we close the doors to people who want to sign a petition, we are stopping democracy from working. Our local buildings should be neutral places where these conversations may happen easily, not places that shut people out. Please consider a policy that allows people to collect signatures in public buildings at no cost. Letting neighbors talk to each other in a quiet and respectful manner, way, is a great way to support our freedom. I hope to hear from you soon about how we can make our public buildings, including town office and county offices, a better place for everyone to be involved in our province's future. And that is not just me. This is a contingency of people that are involved in this petition. I would like to see, I did have the pleasure of talking to Dawn Phillips, and she said to come back to council and speak to you folks, and I've spoke to a few of you about it. Some of you have not heard my spiel. I honestly think that as ratepayers, taxpayers, these buildings are being shut out to a lot of the population, and I just don't believe it's fair that we should be standing in the cold, and I don't care what the situation is. Whoever it is, it should be allowed to be in that building and discussed amongst people. We're not asking for anything special. So this includes the lodge, library, community, any town buildings, and I would like to see it changed. As a taxpayer, I think we have the right to be in our buildings, no matter what happens. We're not, if we're causing issues and we have to be escorted out of there. I understand that. But to go in and just be a peaceful participant of a democratic process, I think it's very wrong. And I think it needs to be changed. It needs to be changed here. And if it goes above here to municipal affairs or whatever, whoever I need to speak to, I will go farther if I have to. But I really want to work with our councillors and our mayor. I think that this is wrong. So I guess if you have any questions, I'll try and answer them.
Sure, thank you. Do we have any questions, Council? Seeing none. Councillor Johannesson?
First off, I commend you guys for standing out in the cold. I've seen you guys at Walmart and on the lake, so obviously this is something that means a lot to you guys, and regardless of my own personal beliefs, I commend you for standing up for something that you believe in. The question I have would be is, what pushback have you received? I'm actually unaware of any specific policies that we might have. What is the pushback you've received with coming into public offices, and what, and maybe this is a question for Ms. Phillips, maybe the mayor, but what can we do to change those things? Because I would agree with you on what you're saying as far as exercising our democratic rights. So what can we do as a council, and what kind of pushback have you received so far?
So originally we were told that we were not even, I was not allowed. I'm saying me, myself. I was not allowed, I understood it, to even be in the building. And that if I did ask for a question, a signature for the petition, I wasn't allowed. And I did change my criteria from possibly a table and some signage. I said, we don't even need that. We just need to go in and speak to people in a warm area. We are allowed to be outside the building and not in traffic areas, which we have complied with. And I think this is a public building. I don't care what the issue is. As long as they're not making a stink in there and causing a problem, I think taxpayers should be allowed to be in our public buildings. But I was basically told by a few people, and I did go as far up as I possibly could, and that I was not allowed. I'm saying I, not just me. We were not allowed to be in there, that we had to be outside. And I think it's wrong. I think that you're segregating a part of the population. And that's how I feel. So.
And just to follow up, so I'll do my, I can't speak for any other councillors, but I'll definitely do my due diligence to figure out what our policy is and what it specifically states, or if people are just saying no for the sake of saying no. So I'll look into that. Just for clarification and for the record, the canvassers of this petition are, you have to go through a process, correct? You have to be approved to do this thing?
Alberta Elections has to allow us to say that we are viable to come and canvass.
Right, and so you guys are vetted and you're able to do this, and you're being restricted access to public buildings, essentially.
So just to clear it up, Tej.
Yeah.
I asked for the written policy. I wanted to see when it was implemented, and because I kept being told there was a policy, it was a policy. So I asked for clarification on that. And I said I would just like to see the policy when it came into effect, and who, is it you, is it above you, who brought it? And Mrs. Phillips was really good. She said it wasn't really a written policy, if I'm correct, that it was an in-house decision, that this is how it would be handled for anything for political or for gatherings that we could rent. And I don't think we need to be renting a room to go into a public building to collect. We are vetted through Alberta Elections. It's not like we're just coming off the street.
So Ms. Phillips confirmed that we don't actually have a written policy.
I believe she said to me there was no actual written policy. It was just because I wanted to see a written policy. I said, if I see a written policy, then I can go from there.
Okay.
So I'll just jump in. So just so all council's aware what our options are for next steps, at the end of the meeting during council request for information and updates, or during the notice of motion, if we're looking to move to create a policy, what we would ask is for administration to explore us to create a policy that includes this, and then that's something that we would then come back and discuss.
With all due respect, I don't necessarily need a policy for something that we don't need to create it. We're creating a problem, or we're trying to solve a problem. But I don't think a policy needs to be written down in our public buildings. I mean, I don't understand why we can't just go in there. I'm not setting up a big booth. I'm not taking up an area. I'm not in a traffic area. I am going amongst the people and saying, would you like to sign a policy? If they say no, we back off. I don't think a policy needs to be written down anywhere. I just think that we need to have our buildings available to us as citizens, no matter what we want. I think it's very disingenuous to say we have to have a policy or rent a room. I'm not, the people that actually rent rooms is when you were in there and you did your council forum. I mean, we went there. Anybody else, if you're having a birthday party or a wedding or whatever, that's a different venue. That's totally different. This is something that, to me, every citizen has a right to vote on. This is a democracy. And I really think it's unfair. I don't care if you make a policy or not. But I think it is very unfair to be told I cannot go in there and that we have to wait outside. I think that that is discriminatory.
Yeah.
And you know right from wrong. I don't need to lecture you. You all have mothers and fathers that have taught you right. And it's democracy, and you are discriminating. And I pay taxes here.
Absolutely. I'm just guiding towards the tool of the policy, because that is how
Yeah.
council has the authority to really move forward and do any decision.
Yeah.
So I will leave that with council. We have that opportunity later in tonight's meeting. Do we have any additional questions for our presentation? Seeing none.
I'd like to
your
thank you for this
presentation.
opportunity. Thank you very much for the ladies and people that have been patient enough with me. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, council, adoption of the agenda is next up on our agenda. Do we have any additions to tonight's agenda?
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. We do not have any additions.
Excellent, thank you. I'll look for a motion to adopt the agenda. Councillor Ostindi, that was a close draw though.
Move adoption of the agenda.
Excellent, all those in favor and opposed, and that is carried unanimously. Next, we'll move along to the consent agenda. Council, I'll just remind you, any consent agenda is a tool used to increase meeting efficiency. If there's any items you'd like removed from the consent agenda, please do so before the motion is being made. The items that administration has recommended to be a part of that are marked with an asterisk on our agenda pages. Would someone like to make, or does anyone have any items to remove first off? It's not as long of a typical motion tonight for consent agenda. Would someone like to move that motion? Councillor Iwanicki.
I'm just opening it back up.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Councillor Mearns was also ready if you'd
Well,
like.
no, I got
You
it.
got it? All right.
Adobe being slow. So I move that the 2026-0210 regular meeting of council meeting minutes be approved as presented, that the 2026-0217 governance and priorities meeting minutes is approved or be approved as presented, that council accepts the economic development project status report as information as presented pursuant to AIR 1321, that council approves electronic meeting attendance by Councillor Holly Bilodeau for the meeting of April 14th, 2026 for the purpose of council-related business, that council approves electronic meeting attendance by Councillor Ian Ostindi for the meeting of April 14th, 2026 for the purpose of council-related business. That's everything.
Excellent, thank you. Any further comments from council? The motion on the floor, all those in favor? And opposed, that is carried unanimously, thank you. Next, we'll move along to business item bylaw 1940, 2026, Pookaddle Park Development Phase 4. Mr. Moore.
Thank you, Mayor Hansen. So this evening we're looking for second and third reading of bylaw 1940, 2026. Which is the authorization to borrow funds for Pookaddle Park Development Phase 4. So First reading was back on January 27th of Bylaw 1940, and so the publications have been put in the local paper, Sylvan Lake News, as outlined there in the report, and the petition period ended on February 20th, Friday of last week. And to my understanding, we have not received a petition from the electors of the town of Sylvan Lake against this bylaw. So we can proceed, council can proceed this evening with second and third reading, if they so desire.
Excellent. We'll start with any questions, council. Seeing none, would someone like, yeah, Councillor Oostende.
One question, in comparison of the two borrowing bylaws we're looking at tonight, sanitary trunk main talks about being a fully off-site leviable. In other words, the money eventually will come from new developments in our town. It will pay it all back. Does Pogattle Park as a project also fall under the off-site levy, a portion of it?
Through the chair to Councillor Oostende, short answer is no. It's a town project, so the funding is outlined there in the report. Borrowed funds and some grant funds we're looking to apply to the project. So the town is not, this is not in the off-site levy
Okay.
model.
Thank you.
All right, would someone like to put a motion on the floor? Councillor Mearns.
Make a motion that council give second reading to bylaw 1940-2026, the Pogattle Park Development Phase 4 borrowing bylaw as outlined in AIR 1331.
Excellent. We'll open it up for any debate or conversation, council. I had a question that I missed during the question time. Just around the grants that we're looking at, when do we anticipate to hear the news on those? I know we have to go forward with the borrowing bylaw just in case, but
we typically hear, yeah, sorry, Mayor Hansen. Yeah, we typically hear on the grants like this one, Local Government Fiscal Framework, and the CCBF, Canada Community Building Fund, in the summer. Okay. So, yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you. Any additional conversation? All right, we have a motion on the floor by Councillor Mearns. All those in favor? And opposed? And that is carried unanimously. Would someone like to move forward a motion for third reading? Councillor Payne.
I move that council give third reading to bylaw 1940-2026, the Pogattle Park Development Phase 4 borrowing bylaw as outlined in AIR 1331.
Excellent. Last chance for any further discussion, council? Councillor Oostende.
It's more just to point out, here we are going quickly through a borrowing bylaw, but also to recognize there's been hours of debate on this, the previous council and this council. So I just thought I wanted to acknowledge that.
Absolutely. Thank you. All right, motion on the floor. All those in favor? And opposed? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you. Next, we'll move along to the bylaw 1941-2026 sanitary trunk main.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Hansen. So another borrowing bylaw for council tonight. Same process, same timelines essentially as the last one. First reading was on January 27th. The publications have taken place and the petition period has ended with no petition being received from electors of the town of Sylvan Lake. So council can now proceed with second and third reading of bylaw 1941 if you so wish.
Excellent, thank you. Council, do we have any questions for Mr. Moore? Great, would someone like to put a motion on the floor? Councillor Oostende.
I move that council give second reading to bylaw 1941-2026, the sanitary trunk main, south annexed lands, borrowing bylaw as outlined in AIR 1332.
Excellent, thank you. We'll open it up for any debate. It's another one we've had lots of previous conversation around. All right, motion on the floor. All those in favor? And opposed? And that is carried unanimously. Would someone like to make a motion for third reading? Councillor Iwanicki.
Move that council give third reading to bylaw 1941/2026, the sanitary trunk main, south annexed lands, borrowing bylaw as outlined in AIR 1332.
Excellent. We'll open it up one more time for any missed thoughts. I think I'm the only one that chimes in on the missed thoughts section because I'm slow to find my own notes.
We're just making it rain.
With that motion on the floor and seeing no comments, all those in favor and opposed, and that is carried unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Moore.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move along to the smoke-free bylaw.
Good seeing you at the track yesterday, Mr. Moore.
Welcome, Mr. Levesque. I see you brought all kinds of backup for this conversation tonight.
And I'm not as tall as Mr. Moore, so I had to adjust my chair first. Thank you, Your Worship and Council. I am bringing forward the smoke-free bylaw for third reading for the third meeting in a row, so I won't go through all the background information or discussion, but starting on the third paragraph under discussion is where I'll start. So during second reading of the smoke-free bylaw discussion, Council also debated the smoking that happens along the sidewalks in the downtown, with many families having to pass through the smoke as they walk through the downtown. In an effort to provide a smoke-free environment for those pedestrians walking along the sidewalks, Council added the following wording to second reading of the bylaw. Under definitions, lakefront no smoking zone means the lakefront area to include the town property from Lakeshore Drive north to the departmental miscellaneous lease, numbered 210029, and the area identified in the departmental lease. Then under the regulations portion, section 5, we added 5C, replaced the wording "the beach" to now conform with the new lakefront no smoking zone. And under 5D, we added "no person shall smoke on a sidewalk along Lakeshore Drive from 34th Street through 53rd Street and Centennial Street from Lakeshore Drive through to 50th Avenue." So those additions have been added and are included in third reading of the bylaw that's being presented today. The only other change I'd like to highlight is under resource impacts. Again, with the increase of the smoking zone and along the sidewalks, we've identified that we would request staffing resources proposed to implement and enforce these changes are the addition of 2 additional seasonal bylaw officers and 2 additional seasonal parks operators for July and August. So the bylaw officers would be the full 4 months. The 2 parks operators would just be for July and August. And the purchase of 2 backpack vacuums for Parks Department. These proposed resources have been included in the 2026 budget for further deliberation and, of course, depending on the outcome of today's reading of the bylaw. I believe those are the only 2 items that I wanted to highlight. Other than that, we've been through this for the last few meetings, so I will pass it over to Council.
Sure, Council will start with questions. Councillor Winicki.
Just for my own curiosity, what would be the need for the additional parks people for the bylaw change? Is that what the vacuums are for, is basically clean up the butts?
Yeah, through the chair. Yes, that's what we had proposed is we would have the 2 seasonals, typically high school students for July and August. and with the backpack vacuums, and they would do maybe a once up and down the sidewalks and then in through the park. In the past, we've had smoking along the pathways within the park. So we're still going to get a bit of that until we can crack down on it. So it would just be helping out within the parks too, along the edges of the sidewalks and the trail system.
My question is also relating to those resources, because just whether we pass this or not, I would assume they are recommended resources. Is that correct? Or only if we pass this? Only because as I look at the map, most of the, this adds a couple of feet here and there, but really these areas already are no smoking as per the provincial bylaw so far from the entrance and exits, anywhere in the park, not exactly the sidewalk, but many of these areas are already not permitted. So we wouldn't be adding just for making this change. The change we'd be adding just for overall service level improvement, I would assume, and we'd see those as options through budget either way?
Madam Mayor, yes and no. I'm going to say we're a little bit before budget presentations, so we do have 2 additional seasonal bylaw officers in the budget regardless, just because of the expanded area. And now with this expanded area, and again, our anticipation that this will maybe move things into back alleys and things, we would be looking for an additional 2 officers. And again, they wouldn't be just for this area, but they would be for the lakefront. They would be for paid parking, residential parking, that kind of thing. But yeah, just kind of the tipping point to think that we would need 2 more officers.
Thank you. Any additional questions? Would someone like to put I'm sorry, we can't take questions from the gallery at this point. Would someone like to put a motion on the floor for us to start discussions? Councillor Mearns, was that a hand I saw? Wonderful.
Sure. Make a motion that council approve 3rd reading on smoke-free bylaw 1942-2026 as presented in AIR 1333.
Excellent, thank you. Let's start with Councillor Mearns, since he put the motion on the floor, then Councillor Payne.
Yeah, I guess heard a few comments since we did the last reading. A lot of it was around enforcement. We've expanded the areas and, you know, if we're going to have something, how are we going to enforce it? So I'm happy to see that there's an additional 2 more that's been outlined in here. Obviously that's at a budget discussion, but it does put me a little bit at ease on how this would be carried out in the enforcement side of things. The other concern I heard was for restaurants that don't have back alley access and for their patrons. So I'm a little bit concerned about that. The other side of it is, you know, how can we work with our restaurants that are on Lakeshore? I think Councillor Bilodeau brought it up last time around, you know, how can we encourage them to make sure, you know, that it's clean out front there? You know, if this bylaw passes the way it is, you know, I'm sure there's still going to be smoking out there. And enforcement's not 24/7, but I think there's something there that we need to capture for the businesses up front as well.
I believe Councillor Mearns and I have had conversations with the same people. So the exact same concern was brought up to me, so I took a walk from basically the Cove all the way down to Mormoo and kind of wanted to gauge where things were. And about half the businesses have areas that are adjacent to the business where customers can go and smoke that are not on the sidewalk. But about half the businesses don't. So their customers will have to leave their establishment and go quite a distance from their space if they want to smoke. Now, with that being said, I want to make it clear, I don't support smoking in any way at all. Like it doesn't, if it's up to me entirely, you know, get rid of the smoking. But when business owners are concerned about what's going to happen with their business, if a large portion of their clientele have to leave their business to go elsewhere to do that, I think that does draw some concern for me. And considering that it's about half in that span between the Cove and Mormoo. So I'm a little on the fence with 5D, with it being the sidewalk on both sides of Lakeshore in that span. So I'm really curious to know what other people have heard, what other people have felt around the horseshoe, because it came to me from 2 separate sources, 2 separate business owners that are concerned.
Councillor Ostindi and then Johannesson.
I think everybody recalls I have a conflict between the 2 portions of the smoke-free bylaw that we want to change, call it simply the cigar lounge versus the sidewalk discussion. I'll stay strictly on the sidewalk discussion right now, and later I'll make comments about the lounge. Really what we were getting at is the idea that we're a mixed public on that sidewalk and many non-smokers have to walk through smoke. That's really what triggered the thinking about all of this. And so one weird thought I had was just the idea of when is the mixed public the most on that sidewalk? Well, the 3 seasons of the year that are warmer and during the day. And so I was playing around in my mind with, can a bylaw simply have a time zone of smoking, non-smoking? And so I thought about this idea of, what if it was, and I'm not, I use the expression sometimes, I'm not married to these numbers yet, but the idea of like an 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., something really simple. In those times, this is a no smoking zone, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Clientele, as I was thinking, oh, is this a good idea or not? Clientele changes during the day too. Like a daytime crowd, having a drink, having a meal, stays a different length of time, typically. I'm not going to say I understand every business on Lakeshore. Different than what I picture, and I'm not someone who's there at night very often. Usually it's much younger than me, that crowd. They're there for many hours. That's a different, as a smoker, that produces a different need to have a smoke. If you're just going in for dinner and you're heading home afterwards, that's a different kind of need to smoke than someone who's hanging out and having a big party till 2 o'clock in the morning. And so anyways, those were thoughts I was playing around with. But this 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. thought was an idea that could make, I thought, a good amendment.
Before jumping to you, Councillor Johannesson, and actually I think that was a really good point about the 2 parts of the bylaw, so let's maybe just stick to that part of the bylaw for now. Is that a logistical nightmare, Mr. Lebsack? If, is that something that's done in other places? I also have the thought that that does align with some of our enforcement hours, but I'd love your opinion on that suggestion.
Well, Madam Mayor, I would suggest, this is just my opinion, and there's a couple of them sitting behind me that might want to tap me on the shoulder and say something different, but yeah, I think it would be, there's 2 parts to it. One, it would be a logistical nightmare in terms of when do people know that it's okay and when it isn't okay. You'd have to pretty much have sign pollution down there in order to make that clear to the public as to when they can and when they can't if we were going to split it up in time zones. On the other side of the coin, it does line up with our enforcement efforts, because our enforcement, it would be 9 o'clock, 9 p.m. is when peace officers and bylaw officers are done their shift, typically. Sometimes later, but typically 9 p.m. And to be honest, it's going to be more of that crowd, of that officers that are going to enforce this crowd than it is the RCMP. So later on in the evening, when it's just RCMP on shift, they're going to do less of this enforcement, although they can. Typically, they're going to do less of it. So again, I'm kind of torn on that. On one side, it does align with our shifts and our peace officers. The other side of it, I think it would be kind of a messaging nightmare trying to decide how the public knows when they are and when they are not allowed to smoke if it's based on times.
Thank you. Councillor Johannesson.
Okay, so I've had a bit of a change of heart on this one a little bit. So just bear with me for a second, but when we posted this on our Facebook account, that was one of the largest comment sections I've ever seen on a Town of Sylvan Lake Facebook page. And so, as I do, I was on there conversing with people. I've had multiple emails to myself, messages of people with concerns of the bylaw, and I really couldn't disagree with the general message that was being sent. And the general message being sent is really, are we doing too much? Are we policing people's behavior too much? Our job as a council isn't to police people's behaviors. It is to listen to the people and what they want, what the majority of the people want. And so for me, a couple concerns came from many different people. One, and Mr. Lipsack, I think you could probably help me out with some of these things, is are we putting our bylaw officers in a really tough position? So we all know around this table and in our town that the people care most about enforcing are tent bylaws, which we've banned, cleaning up our lake, making sure our washrooms are clean. That's what the people care about. Nobody in my campaign was concerned about the smokers on Lakeshore. I mean, they're bars. People are going to smoke. The reality is that we can sit here around this table and say, well, yeah, this sounds like a great idea, but in the real world, it doesn't really translate. So people are going to still smoke. And then is bylaw going to be able to go and give every single person a ticket? And at what point does bylaw just give up? And the question I have before I continue, because I've got a couple more things I want to say here, Mr. Lepsek, what does it, like if I'm smoking a cigarette, and I don't smoke, but if I was, and I was in this no smoke zone, and a bylaw officer came up to me and said, hey, sir, I'm giving you a ticket. And I said, no. I'm not going to give you my ID. You don't know who I am. You're going to write a ticket to nobody. What remedy does a bylaw officer have to say, yes, you have to give me your ID? And so I kind of want to know that question before, because this probably goes for all the bylaws, but I was just thinking, like, what if someone just says, no, I don't want to give you my ID? What happens?
Through the chair, I would just simply say that there is remedies for that. We're not going to get into any details, but that isn't an option for the public. So there is remedies for that.
Okay. Okay, cool, thank you.
Ms. Phillips, I'll just let you jump in quickly. Before
Sorry, I was just going to comment that it wasn't pertaining to this item, the smoking bylaw, that part. That was all. The questioning about the bylaw, I was just going to point out that that was kind of off topic, and if we could do that as a separate ask, I guess, for information.
Oh,
that was all. But you shifted, so we're good.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, we're good.
Yeah, and so I think for me, we need to probably relook at this and maybe keep it as is on Lakeshore, maybe for this year, and do a little bit more public consultation. I don't think at this point that I can support it as is, because it's not what I'm hearing that is going to be what the people want, or that it's going to be easy. I would rather our bylaw officers focus on the things that people truly care about.
Councillor Mearns.
I love the idea Councillor Stinney brought forward about time. I understand the sign pollution, but when he was mentioning the times, I was like, oh, I wonder if that fits with our bylaw officer hours. So it seems like that fits, but it's also an opportunity for us to work with business owners. Hey, this is the time zone, but we'd ask for your help outside of that time zone to make sure your area is clean, things like that. So I like the idea for 5D with the time zone.
Councillor Bilodeau?
I do kind of want to say that I think we're looking to change the culture of Lakeshore Drive, and that's on purpose because people have been saying it's dirty. I want to walk on the sidewalk on the south side down Lakeshore with my family and not walk through a bunch of people smoking. And all the filth that comes with it. So I think as council, we're looking to update this bylaw, giving it a new name to the Lakefront No Smoking Zone. The bylaw is already there, essentially. We're looking to change it. We're looking to maybe enforce it more, but I think ideally we're just trying to take, like what I see with this change is that we're trying to put our best foot forward to listen to the people that live in Sylvan Lake, to say, we hear you, we want to clean up a little bit more. I mean, it's not all gonna happen in the first summer. I don't think, I look at Banff and I look at Canmore and I say, why is it so clean there? Like, why can't we achieve it? What's different about Sylvan Lake? It's because we've had a culture that stayed the same for so long, and now we're looking to change it. And change is often difficult, but I think we need to keep the goal in mind. And I think we absolutely work with the businesses. There are going to be challenges which I think we need to address. I love Councillor Ostindi's idea, because we can work around bylaw. It is funny that we'd have one rule for one time frame and one rule for another, but if that's how we can start making the change till we can potentially groom people to a new idea, I don't know how else to say it, it's a good first start. But I think that we have to remember that we're taking good first steps to achieve something really important because it is about cleaning up the downtown.
Councillor Iwanicki, do you have any thoughts on that? And then I'm going to jump in with a process suggestion for us.
Yeah, I'll just, I'll kind of add my commentary, the same sort of thoughts I said previously, I wasn't here last week, and I don't go on Facebook very often, so I didn't look at any of the comments if there was a Facebook thing on the town site. But what I would hazard a guess is the case is there's a heck of a lot of confusion going on about the existence of our already existing non-smoking bylaw, right? Like, you already can't smoke in the park and people do it, right? You already can't smoke in front of a restaurant and people do it. The problem is that, and this is what I've said on a lot of the bylaws, is the way we have them structured and worded is confusing to people. And it's not fair that our residents are confused about what our bylaws are and where and when they can be enforced and for what purpose. And so that's where my push has always been, is on simplifying the bylaw and unifying it, right? So the smoking is a prime example where you walk 5 feet or 10 feet away and suddenly you're allowed to smoke, right? And you walk another 10 feet and you're not allowed to smoke. And you walk 5 feet and you're, it's this weird checkerboard of where people are allowed to smoke in the Lakeshore area. And I'm not surprised bylaw doesn't, I don't know the statistics on it, so I don't even want to jump to conclusions that they don't ticket on this, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's difficult and frankly a nuisance to do. I think the restaurants ultimately will adapt if we work with them and message with them. On the timing issue, I'd be open to anything, really, frankly, so long as the bylaw is unified and standardized for everywhere, so there is no confusion about what you can and can't do. And then finally, the biggest thing we've heard repeatedly, endlessly, is that the Lakeshore, and I lump that in, people fixate on the beach, but really it's the whole Lakeshore area, is dirty. And like, you go by, I don't know how many cigarette butts I've had to pick up on that beachfront area and the trails. And we're just going to have to do a better job in having a more strictly worded non-smoking bylaw is a step in the right direction, and one that we give direction to our boys in the back there, saying, this is what we want you to fixate on. We want you to focus your energies on strictly enforcing those bylaws on the Lakeshore area so that people know that we're taking it seriously. And behavior will change or it won't, but it sure as heck won't change if we don't have bylaws that are being enforced. So that's where my head always goes to, is something that's simple, that everybody knows what it is. They may not like it, but they know what it is.
That really captured some of my thinking as well. I really agree, and I'd hate to make more work, but if this turns out to be a further conversation, I'd actually love to see a map of what that strip currently looks like for no smoking, because it is such a patchwork, and I don't think people currently understand, and we don't have any authority to lessen those rules to let these businesses smoke in front of their properties. It's already not permitted on most of that strip. And I think if residents saw the comparison of, well, this is actually what the rules already are, and this is provincial, and this is what the change is, it does simplify it. I am not opposed, though, to the varying hours. And I just want to, before we do a round, I see Ostindi and then Payne, but I just want to provide a suggestion on how we potentially move forward. We've got some options. We need to talk about the cigar lounge as well. And we certainly could pass the bylaw with an amendment with all of those things, but if we are finding ourselves very divided, we could remove this second portion, pass or fail the bylaw based on the cigar lounge. And then if we have an appetite to discuss this further, make a motion immediately following to discuss this part of it, to come back for the next readings at March meetings to allow us to separate those out in some ways. It would prolong it. I don't believe we should prolong the cigar lounge decision because we have a public hearing that's directly related to that. And if it doesn't make it to there, then there's no sense in going further. But I will ask after we have some conversation on both sides of it to do a bit of a straw poll on those so that we can make the best steps forward as council and ensure that we're, either option would still allow us to get this in place in the month of March, which I think would be reasonable. So. Councillor Ostindi, you had a comment relating to that, and then Councillor Payne.
I can wait to when you do the full circle.
Okay, Councillor Payne.
I just wanted to point out again, a few weeks ago when we started this conversation, I see even going back a little further when we started the conversation about the lakeshore and about the cleanliness and about the enforcement. The conversation that keeps coming back is enforcement, enforcement, enforcement. That this is really about enforcement. That for so long, so much has been allowed or so much has been unable to be enforced with lack of manpower, whatever the case might be. When I look at this bylaw, 95% of this bylaw is exactly the same as it was a year ago. That even this situation here with 5D, really, when you look at the spaces where people shouldn't be smoking anyhow, it really encompasses, again, about 95% of the space that we're talking about. People, as Councillor Iwaniki pointed out, you already can't smoke in a park. You already can't smoke in front of a restaurant. You already can't smoke in all these places that we're laying out. So, you know, I really don't think the issue is the wording of the bylaw. I think the issue is the enforcement. That if it comes back to doing what we have committed to do, and that is increasing the enforcement along Lakeshore on both sides of the road, making sure that the issues that people are concerned about are being addressed. And I do think that whether we keep it in the way it was worded before or change the wording, I do think that the culture will change, as Holly pointed out. And what we're trying to do here is create a different culture along that space. We've already made that space significantly more family than it was 10 years ago. And 10 years ago, we made it more family than it was 10 years before that. So already we've been able to modify the way in which Lakeshore is used. It's not just party central like it was in the 90s. You know, it's different. And I think we're moving along that continuum. I don't know if changing the wording is going to be the piece we need. I think what's going to be the piece we need is increasing the enforcement, adding enforcement, and making sure that we're actually enforcing the bylaw that's been in place for years. So going forward, I don't know if removing D or allowing D to remain the way it was and making sure that we're doing our due diligence is going to really be that different. One of the things I just want to point out is along that space, if you are smoking outside of, let's say, Bucks, if you're standing in the Bucks parking lot, 6 inches into the parking lot, you're 8 inches away from the sidewalk and you're allowed to smoke. So how much of a difference is it truly going to make? So I really do think that the piece here that we need to focus on is the enforcement piece, and we need to actually do what the bylaw says, or at least do our part to try and adhere to the bylaw. However, if we're going to change things, I think that Councillor Ostindi, I think your idea is brilliant. I think making this a contingent thing upon time is one that allows for a compromise, that allows the businesses to still have that security, have that consideration, and keeping families, you know, out of that plume. So I'm really beginning to move along that continuum of the way in which we need to go is to focus on what's important, and that is the enforcement piece.
I really like the timeline. I like the idea of it. The challenge I see with it is that You can say 8 PM, you could amend section D to say from 8 AM to 8 PM, but with that, you also still need to clarify that the provincial legislation states that you still cannot smoke within 5 meters of any door. So still that area of the street, anything near any of those businesses, they're still not going to be able to smoke. So it's not I do like the concept, because I don't disagree with you. That is the time when people are more likely to be standing out on the street smoking. But we would need to further clarify that with that part of it, right? That's my only comment, is we'd want to make sure that we're amending to, and there might be more to that. We might want to take a minute to figure out how to word that if that's the route you go. But just wanted to add that.
That's great. Councillor Oosthuizen.
Just speaking to that wording, just playing with a thought here. D reads that no person shall smoke on the sidewalk, et cetera, et cetera. And then to add the words, in the hours of 8 AM to 8 PM. I'm not married to those hours, but 8 till 8 is a simple way to remember. In the hours of 8 AM to 8 PM, and outside these hours, not within 5 meters of any business doorway. So it then refers back to the provincial.
As per,
I'm not proposing that amendment right now. I'm just saying those are words I was playing with just now.
Councillor Mearns.
So thank you for the reminder about the provincial side of things, because I did forget about that. I'd be happy to strike 5D and enforce what's in place right now. That, to Councillor Payne's point, whether it's been a manpower issue, whether it's been, other issues outside of that, I would be happy to do that based on, when you think about the doors that are in front of that sidewalk all along there, there's not very many places legally you can anyways. So I would be happy to strike 5D and, continue on with, the enforcement, manpower increases that we would see at budget time, and to put the boots on the ground instead of, adding something that's really already in place. I think, and to Councillor Iwanicki's points earlier, further confusion, I think, because the matter of fact is we should be enforcing that along there in, let's call it 95% of the time. So I'd be happy to strike 5D and to continue to increase the enforcement that's been outlined.
Madam Mayor, do you have the original wording available for 5D?
I do not. Mr. Lebsack, and then we'll go to Councillor Johannesson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm just going to start with just some clarification on a previous comment about the 5 meters. So it is, even in this bylaw, we've copied and pasted from the Provincial Act. The following are designated public spaces for the purpose of this bylaw: public buildings and those areas within 5 meters of an entrance or exit to a public building are prohibited. So that part is already in there. If we didn't want to muddy the water of the wording in the other one, it is in there already. And then to Councillor Payne, your question was, what was the original wording of 5D? There was no original wording of 5D. This is what was added at the second reading, was to add, no person shall smoke on a sidewalk along Lakeshore Drive from 34th Street to 53rd Street and Centennial Street from Lakeshore Drive to 50th Avenue. That entire piece was added at second reading.
Councillor Johannesson.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of echo Councillor Mearns' comments. I would agree with the 5D comment, and I think I think Councillor Iwanicki said it, but there is a lot of confusion. I think even within myself when I try to read the bylaw and understand, obviously no one's gonna bring a meter stick and measure 5 meters, but that's provincial regulation. I just want to make sure that whatever we decide to do, one, I would like to get some, and I can do this on my own time, but if we can do this as a council too, is get some more public input on these things and how this affects people. Whether we agree with smoking or not, there are people that smoke, and it's their free will to do so. And I would also like to make sure that these rules are explicitly clear, so that, and again, Councillor Iwanicki's been on this as well, so that bylaw has some teeth to really enforce these things and make sure we're enforcing it. I still am of the opinion that there needs to be a priority of enforcement, because we only have so many bylaw officers, and that priority does need to come on the actual beach, with smoking on the beach, with tents on the beach, litter on the beach, and these types of things. So I would just like to really point that out. I echo Councillor Mern's opinion with 5D, and I just want to make sure that we are like grade 3 level clear on the rules of how things are going, so that people aren't arguing with bylaw officers, and bylaw officers have to be like, this is our rule, it's very clear and standard.
Mr. Lebsack.
Thank you, Your Worship. If I could just add to this portion of the debate, I just quickly texted with our manager, and I believe our enforcement side of things believes that a full enforcement, the way it's written in 5D currently, would be easier to do than having to determine 15 feet, 5 meters from each doorway and what's the area in between and those kinds of regulations. Because as Councillor Iwanicki pointed out, it's a total patchwork down there as to you can't go 15 meters, 5 meters here, but then there's 3 meters that you can, and then you can't. And then you, all the way down the sidewalk, there's portions like that. So I think from an enforcement standpoint, if that's what we're focusing on, then it would be easier for enforcement to have a total ban than it would be a patchwork.
Thank you. So maybe on this item, I kind of hear 3 things rattling around just to try and get us to a consensus point. The question I guess I'd like to ask is, on this specific item, bare bones provincial, blanket, and hours. And just your thoughts on those 3 things, if we could go around council by council to get a bit of consensus here, and then we can kind of plan where we're going. And I'll start with either Councillor Payne or Mearns, whoever's ready. Payne, looks like you're up.
I will concede to my elder. No, you know, in all honesty, I would be okay with D being removed, going with the provincial regulation, providing we actually enforce it. And I'm not as concerned with the 5 meters. I think a lot of common sense needs to be brought to bear with these things. And I think if you're standing on the steps of Fireside having a cigarette, there's no need for a measuring tape. You know, so I think it's enforceable. I do like the simplicity of it. However, like I said before, I like Councillor Rustindi's compromise. So I'm still somewhat on the fence, but okay with D being removed.
Okay, so what I heard from that, because I'm going to just look for a really concise answer from everyone.
Don't have one.
You prefer, okay, we're going to skip you for now. Councillor Johannesson.
Okay, just Jazz is confusing me. Can you give me the 3
Yeah,
the 3 things you want to hear?
I guess the first question is, do you want to default to the provincial standards with the measurements or the blanket zoning? And then if blanket zoning, hour restrictions or no hour restrictions?
Okay, I would like to get more public consultation on this, because it is a way more hot button issue than I thought it was going to be. And I think out of respect to the citizens of Sylvan Lake, that's what I would like to do. And I can do that on my own time. I have been, and I'll continue to do so. So right now I would say stick to the provincial regulations and not put our own regulations in. The 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. thing, I think on paper is a good idea. I would leave that up to the people that will be enforcing that to decide if that's something. It seems simple, like I can't think of, you know, off the top of my head.
Just know, if you prefer the provincial, then we don't even need to bring hours into the
equation.
equation.
Oh, perfect.
'Cause it's, so
okay.
No need to answer that portion.
Beautiful.
Councillor Ostindi, what are your thoughts? Provincial or blanket?
I would do the advocate for a time idea. And I'm thinking, so that's my quick answer.
So blanket
that would
with
mean
a time?
A blanket with time.
Okay.
You know how I'm going to vote, though. I think I've already alluded to that before. But these are cultural changes, and someone, a long-term resident, told me that the Varsity Hall didn't allow drinking. So what you did is you just crossed the street, dug out your sand out of your bottle out of the sand, you drank it, and then you headed back across the street. And probably every time you crossed the street, it was harder to find your bottle. But anyway, that was the culture of Sylvan Lake at one time. And about 15 years ago, a council, just like us, made the rule that, you know, they had to put up these fences in front of the patios, because the culture was, if you were over 18, you bought booze, you handed it to your 16-year-old friend on the sidewalk. And this is another one of those cultural shifts. And so yeah, this is a tough one, but it's part of that culture shift.
That's fair. I'm going to say I prefer the blanket zoning because I think it's easier for clarity with the time limits. Councillor Iwanicki, provincial or blanket?
Yeah, I don't support the provincial. It already has been working. So, yeah, I would like a blanket, and time limits, sure, if necessary.
Okay. Councillor Bilodeau?
I think I would vote for the blanket with the time changes. I think what I'm hearing mostly is just that there hasn't been enforcement, and now we're going to be enforcing so much and so many things. So I think we want to find a balance. This could be the balance. It's a good first start. We pick a time where we change the rules.
And I'll just...
And the blanket.
Yeah. I'm just going to jump into your earlier thought too. My hope is, depending on how this goes, that we might be able to split these up so it won't give you that voting conflict. Just adding in, yeah. And that would also give us a little bit further time for discussion. Councillor Mearns.
I'm really hoping we can do that, split that out. You know, it is a cultural shift if we're going to be enforcing it along the restaurants. Quick question for Mr. Lebsack. You may not know the answer to this, but like, is that something that we have been able to enforce or have enforced in the last few years, or is it a struggle? If you don't know, that's fine, but it's just a question.
Yeah, through the chair, certainly we do. I wouldn't say that we don't enforce it at all. With the manpower, you're right, it's not, and it never will be 100% enforced. There's always going to be times when there's not an officer standing right nearby, and somebody might light up. But yeah, certainly it has been done in the past. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that. So I would be fine to remove 5D. It's going to be a cultural shift. We have more enforcement out there, understanding that it's, you know, a little bit of patchwork. I get that. But if we have more presence out there walking the streets, we've said it before, ticket news on social media will travel fast. So I think there's some free advertising for us there. And I think it's an opportunity to work with the restaurant owners and the shop owners around there to tell them, hey, this is, you know, we're going to enforce it more. We're going to be out there. Patrons are going to get tickets. They're not going to be happy. And ask them for their buy-in and their help, right? And I think it's an opportunity to work with them. You know, a year from now, if we haven't seen the changes, then I would be willing to relook at this, but I would be happy to strike 5D.
Sure. And what I heard is we have the majority to have this conversation separately. So let's table this portion for now. Let's talk about the cigar lounge portion, and then that will give us some direction on how to split this out and how it could come back. So let's hop back into the cigar lounge conversation. Council, is there some discussion we want to have around that? Councillor Bain.
You know, I think in conversations we've had about the cigar lounge, I just want to say that I appreciate Councillor Ostindi's perspective. And I've thought about this a bit over this last week and a half. I do think, though, that as long as the province, the federal government, as long as they allow bars to exist, as long as they allow casinos to exist, as long as they allow, you know, anything oxygen bars to exist, I think it's people's choice. And the way in which the regulations are built for this facility, it's not as though somebody who doesn't smoke is going to be exposed or going to bump up against this. Even the way in which the regulations exist for people who work there. Like if you work there, you don't have to go into those rooms. Like there's not even cleaning of the facility during the day while it's open. So I do think that this is one of those things where a business has an opportunity to build a business and people have a choice. Nobody's being put in a situation where they're not able to choose to be exposed or not be exposed. So I'm perfectly fine with it.
We'll just go around on this topic. So Councillor Johannesson.
Perfect. Yeah, I mean, I've been very clear about this. For me, this just comes back to, I didn't get elected, or I didn't want to be elected to police people's behavior, to police people's choices, to police people's thoughts, words, speech, whatever it might be. People, you know, I've mentioned before, I think this is an opportunity for a place for, you know, men to go to. Of course, women can go to it too. But I would imagine it would be predominantly men. And it's a place where they can go and be with other men and have conversations that maybe they don't have in other places. And I think there's a net mental health benefit to a place like this. We can argue and debate what our personal thoughts are about smoking and to one's physical health, but I will make the argument 1,000 times out of 1,000 that you can't have good physical health if you don't have good mental health. And that's the reality of the world we live in. I also look at it from a business perspective. If a person who owns a building is willing to spend immense amount of money to meet the strict provincial regulations, then they should be allowed. I don't think in council we should be excluding businesses because of our own personal thoughts or anecdotal experiences with smoking. I don't think that's our job. I think we should be welcoming businesses. I think that something like this is a massive tourist attraction to get people into this business, and we're not taking it on financially, the business owner is. And so I don't think that we should step in the way because of personal beliefs on physical health or what people might do. Because if we get into that area, we're going to have to get rid of McDonald's, A&W, Wendy's, and all the garbage food that is out there that poisons people's health way more than smoking does. And I say that from a perspective of not my opinion, but on actual data. So to sit here and say, well, we shouldn't do this because smoking isn't good for people, well, now we're hypocrites because we've got 800 liquor stores and 750 weed stores and fast food joints up the yin-yang, and people are poisoning themselves every single day of their lives. We just are attached to smoking because of the culture that we live in, and it's been demonized and whatever, and then maybe rightfully so. But I'd much rather smoke a cigar than eat a Big Mac. That's, you know, my personal opinion, and I think that as a council, we want to accept businesses in, whether we agree with what the business is doing or not. It's obviously not illegal. They have to be into their strict guidelines, and I think overall it'd be a great place. And I think, like I said, a net mental health benefit for people in society is a good thing. And so yeah, I support us doing what we can on council to help this business open and hopefully be successful.
Councillor Ostindi.
Just thinking about the question of the ability to have these businesses, senior levels of government have allowed us to have this business, but they didn't tell us we had to have this business. So they have given us that duty to make that decision. So we as representatives of our community are forced to make that decision. And so it's with some strange irony that last week I was spending time with my mother-in-law and not able to come to our council meeting. My mother-in-law, Mary Moran, I first met her 32 years ago, and one of the things I reflected on very quickly in our relationship was, how do you smoke that heavy from the age of 13 to 60 something at that point? I think she was literally about my age when I first met her. And she won the lottery. You know, I shared the story of my grandfather never having known him because he didn't win the lottery on smoking. However, Mary didn't win the lottery. She has vascular dementia, which is correlated to smoking. It's like a slow motion stroke of the brain. And she has lung cancer. She doesn't know it, but she does. And that's why her oxygen levels are dropping like crazy. So these things inform me, and senior levels of government tell me that it is my responsibility to make this decision about this kind of business in our town. There's some businesses, senior level of government says, no, I have no right to make a decision on. For instance, prostitution. We have no right to allow prostitution in our town, although it does exist, but not as a legitimate business. And other businesses, I have no moral compass that says I shouldn't allow a pizza joint in our town. Some people think we should get rid of pizza joints. I've heard that in election campaigns. But in my moral compass, I don't see anything wrong with a pizza joint. Enough to say, I think we should have a bylaw against pizza restaurants. So my moral compass tells me, from these examples and my life's experience, that smoke, cigars, whatever you want on your private land. And I'm just not going to advocate in this seat as a representative for that business in my community, just as a council like us said no to a casino in the past. They were legal businesses. A casino is a legal business, and it might be a business one day in our town. But a council said no at one point in time. And that's the responsibility that's been given to me, and that's why I'm making that decision for that reason.
Thank you. I'll jump to me next in the queue. I am comfortable with this part of the bylaw moving forward. Ultimately, my passion is really around those public spaces, and I'd like to see it limited there, but a space that someone can choose to go for themselves, I do feel differently about, so I'm a yes. Councillor Iwanicki.
I'll just keep this simple. I'm in favor of it.
Councillor Bilodeau.
I still say this with the idea that I'm not sure, but I have to be sure. I'm just going to move forward with a yes based on the fact that they have to meet all the following conditions, and I wish them luck with that.
Councillor Marns.
Yeah, I'll echo Councillor Payne's thoughts and his comments for sure. I do want to say I appreciate Councillor Stindy's candor and the ability to share that, because I'm sure it's not easy, but appreciate that.
Thank you. In terms of steps moving forward, I'm wondering if we can take a few minutes of a recess, because I'm hearing that an amendment to the motion is so that we can really focus on one decision and then have the rest of it come back. And I'm just curious, I'm looking for some help when it comes to that wording. So if we could take 10 minutes now, Council, let's take 15, gives time to do that, plus give everyone a break. Thank you for your patience and for the great conversation, Council. I think this is an important one, so I'm glad we're taking the time to do it right. Councillor Mearns.
Yeah, I would like to amend my original motion, and my new motion would be the council approved third reading of the smoke-free bylaw 1942-2026 in report AIR 1333 as amended to remove section 5D.
Thank you. And just for clarity, for anyone in here, what we're doing here ultimately is removing the discussion around the Lakeshore Drive zone, any of that area, so that we're only talking about one part of the issue. Council, for information, after we pass or fail this part of the motion, you can expect, as you see on the screen, a follow-up motion that directs us to bring back the other part of it at a different date. But that just allows us to split the conversation so that we don't all end up unsatisfied with the split vote on different items of it. So. Councillor Mearns has that motion to amend, or has that motion on the floor. Do we want to have any discussion around what's left for us to discuss? Do we need to vote on that amendment? But on the amendment to the motion, do we need to?
Sorry, I'm hearing mixed responses. Usually if the mover makes the motion and there's general consensus in the room, you don't need to, but if you want it cleaner, you can vote on the amendment. So there are two ways to do it, but it's generally accepted that as long as there's that consensus, that you're good to move forward with the amendment.
Even if the amendment is profoundly different from the original motion?
Well, it's just, if you're more comfortable with a vote, then you can vote on the amendment.
Well, I think in this
and then
case,
vote on the full motion.
In this case, I think the amendment is so profoundly different from the original motion because it actually eliminates half of the original motion.
So you could vote on the amendment to the...
Let's just keep it clean and we'll do that. We absolutely could do that without a vote. I think we have consensus, but if you'd prefer to, happy to do that. So with that, we have a motion for an amendment on the floor. This is just that removal portion that Councillor Mearns has made. All those in favor on the amendment? And opposed, and that is carried unanimously. Now we have a new motion on the floor that is to pass third reading with the removal of that section, just for clarity. Ms. Phillips?
Now it should just be third reading because you've already amended it.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So for third reading, do we have any further discussion on what we are now deciding on? Great. All those in favor? And opposed? Wonderful. And that is carried. I'd like to make a subsequent motion that council, that administration bring back the smoke-free bylaw 1942-2026 to the next regular meeting of council to include smoking restriction on town sidewalks and recommendations around timelines. And I'll also just add, doesn't need to be part of the motion, but I would love to see a map of current provincial restrictions versus the new proposal. Mr. Lebsack also did remind me that that will be way too small to see on a page, so we can expect to see that digitally so we can all blow it up to our heart's content, and I certainly appreciate that. That secondary motion is on the floor. Do we have any further discussion on that, council? Seeing none, all those in favor? And opposed, and that is carried unanimously. Thank you for your patience working through that, council and administration. All right, move along to more Mr. Lebsack, emergency response and pursuit policy.
Thank you, Your Worship Council. As you can see here, we are bringing forward a policy for emergency response and pursuit, which what's the word I was looking for? Relates only to our community peace officers. So they're the only ones that would possibly have this opportunity anyway. And so this here, as I've pointed out in the background portion, this comes directly from the Public Safety and Emergency Services Division of the Province of Alberta. It is essentially word for word out of their document. It is something that we have to follow as part of their requirements to employ peace officers. And again, it has to be passed by council every so many years in order for us to meet our requirements under the peace officer program. So certainly we are open to comments and questions as to what is presented here in front of you, but as I will remind you again, this is word for word out of the Peace Officer Manual, and it's a requirement under that program in order for our officers to not be able to respond or chase or pursue as part of their regular duties. The only time they would be able to is if they are so directed by an RCMP.
Councillor Oostende, question.
Just one question about the use of our bylaw and peace officer vehicles. Can we do not, as a town, in our policy, allow our vehicles to be used as a roadblock? Can a RCMP or the police service direct our bylaw or peace officers to move their vehicle in such a way as to be a roadblock? Do you know if there's that authority?
So, through the chair, not in the pursuit or the detainment of an individual, no. We can use our vehicles for roadblocks in terms of doing traffic control, other issues like that, but not in the pursuit or detainment of an individual.
Thank you.
Any additional questions, Council? Would someone like to make us a motion? Councillor Bilodeau.
Make a motion that council adopt the emergency response and pursuit policy P003-001A as presented in report ARR 1335. And I did that without my glasses.
Well done. Any further discussion? Oh.
And further, that council rescind policy P003-001.
I do love that that was after the gloat about no glasses. Council, let's discuss. Any comments? No. Great. Seeing none, motion on the floor. All those in favor? And opposed? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you. Next, we'll move along to the very speedy after requested, thank you for that, Municipal Emergency Management Bylaw 1946-2026.
All right, Your Worship and Council. As you can see here, we have brought forward the amendment to the Municipal Emergency Management Bylaw. What that does is it changes not only the terms of reference, but it changes the bylaw where there's a composition portion of what the advisory committee is. So previously the advisory committee was 2 councillors, typically the mayor and 1 councillor, along with the rest of the emergency management group. And now it includes all of council. So this would be a committee that includes all of council plus the identified staff there, CAO, Director, Deputy Director of Emergency Management, Fire Chief, and Manager of Municipal Enforcement. That is the change to this policy that we brought forward, or bylaw, sorry, that we brought forward.
One thing I was unclear on, and just a question for you, is can the meetings take place, do they have to be standalone meetings through the proposal, or can they take place as part of our Governance and Priorities Committee meetings? That's not a challenge.
No, these, sorry, through the chair, these meetings would be able to take place at the Governance and Priorities meetings, regular meetings, yeah.
Excellent. Any further questions? Would someone like to make a motion? Councillor Payne. Oh, thank you.
I move that council approve first reading of the Municipal Emergency Management Bylaw 1946-2026 as presented in report AIR 1334.
Excellent. We'll open up with debate and comments. I'll say I brought forward this notice of motion, and I very much support this. The information that comes across in this committee is one that I think quite often we've referred back and said, hey, can this also be shared with council? So that committee of 2 members is seeing it anyways. We also purposely designed the addition of the formerly COW, now Governance and Priority Committee meetings, to add a second one a month in the hopes of capturing some of these extra things. We've been very busy in those meetings because we're also using it for orientation and budget, but that season will slow down, and I think this is a fit within the meetings we already have. No sense in adding extra for no reason. So I think this is a great move, and will decrease one of our committees which also frees up some capacity elsewhere because I know we have other demands on time and want to make sure that the committees we're assigned to are the most valuable for us. Any additional comments or debate? All those in favor? And opposed? And that is carried unanimously. Next, we'll move along to correspondence and information items. Council, do we have any questions on these items? Seeing none, I'll just give a bit of a side note. We had a very initial meeting with some more information to come back today with the RCMP today. I had a couple of questions within their reports, but one of them was around community consultation, and they expressed that they really enjoyed doing the Chatting with Council event, Chatting with Council and the COPs that we did last year, and expressed an interest to do that again this year. So I will send them our upcoming dates for the rest of the year, and hopefully we can get that scheduled to do another joint event. I think we had a pretty reasonable turnout for that last time. I think it'd be really neat if we could include that potentially with one of our summer, you know, whether it be skate park or playground ones, just to get a bit of a different demographic for that conversation this year. But they were happy with it, and I think so were we. So looking forward to getting that on our calendars at some point soon. Seeing no additional questions, on we go to the CAO report.
All right, the CAO report is in your agendas. I'll just highlight a few areas. I will update our corporate services notice here that we're recruiting an HR manager. We have hired Becky Jackson as our manager of HR, and we are posting now for her position as a coordinator. So excited to have that. If you see Becky, make sure you congratulate her. We're very excited. Community Services, Random Acts of Kindness Week is February 17th to 20th. Next Door Center, we have additional schools out day camps. Sorry, that's worded differently. And coming up on March 6th and 20th, as well as for spring break. The Meltdown happens on March 21st. Grants are now open for the RCT micro grant and You Can Play program. Parks and Protective Services, the Winter Village and Lions Park light takedown beginning February 17th. And our Lakeshore renovations are ongoing. Planning and Development, all their reports are attached with their statistics. Environmental, the South Reservoir work is on schedule with our currently cells. 1 of 3 cells are being completed currently or being maintained. In operations, just highlighting that Tom McNee, a 39-year team member with Public Works, retired on February 10th. So again, if you have a chance to see him, I wish him well. We've started a work team regarding the 50th Street, Centennial Street upcoming renovation. And on 47th Ave, the construction on the traffic signals has begun. And also, I hope you're all aware of this one, but we had an RFP around the strategic plan. You've heard, I believe, from Strategic Steps. They were the successful proponent for our strategic planning activity starting this weekend. So Friday and Saturday, all of council and senior administration will be taking part in that activity. Us supporting you in creating your plan, to be clear. So, and if there's any other questions or comments on the CAO report.
Councillor Stindy.
Just wondering the location of the storm station and boathouse sanitary lift stations. Where are they? Because I was wondering, it says we're making progress in terms of grease in our lines, and I was wondering the location of them.
Of the Fatberg that is quoted,
Yeah.
I thought
I just didn't really want to highlight that one. I was like, I don't want to go there. Anyone? Mr. McIntyre?
I'm fairly certain that's the lift station across the street from Centennial Park. As it,
That's the boathouse one?
That's my understanding.
Interesting. I did have maybe more comments. One, I just have to express my feedback under the, I'm happy we're doing the Grieve Together program. I'll always share a story when we talk about grieving groups that I, after a death in my family, did attend one in Red Deer. And there's about 20 people that attended this AHS group. And I was the only one that actually lost someone. Everyone there was because they lost a pet or a dog. And I'll say it felt incredibly hard to go through that process when no one was actually grieving humans. And I'll just express my feedback that I don't know that those groups belong together, and that as we advertise that, I think it's very important that you specify whether this is grief because of death or grief because of other situations. And my other comment is just under the Nexar Center day camps. Maybe not so much day camps, but public swimming, skating, all those extra times. I think it's fantastic when you have a child that's part of the Chinook's Edge school system. But I'll just note that our RDP days off school land on a different schedule, and we've never offered them for our other school district in town. Now, we likely wouldn't have the same spring break uptake in those full day camps just because there's not as many students that are a part of that school system, but I'm curious if we've ever explored or tried those drop-in, stick and puck, those type of activities that align with our other school calendar in town.
Yeah, we can have some follow-up conversations on that, unless you have anything to immediately comment, Ms. Collicutt.
Yes, we have done a few in recent years. Some of the timelines have lined up nicely, which is really helpful when we're looking at programming. In the past, we've also done on the Mondays when the Catholic School Division has early dismissal. We've done our programming earlier, so I can't remember off the top of my head what time they would get out, but we would do programming to align with that for specifically the arenas. It's difficult with the pool, with the swim team coming in and other programming that's happening. But yes, we have done that in the past.
That's great, thank you. Any additional questions on the CAO report, Council? Seeing none, we'll move along to Council request for information and updates. And Councillor Johannesson, I believe we want to talk about mock council representation.
Yeah, so I'm just looking and clarify what we've got this coming up, and I'm looking for someone to cover for me. I know you're the alternate, but you have something going on as well. I don't have childcare from March 10th to April 15th, so I'm out of commission during those times. So looking for someone to replace me. Do you want me to do it for the whole year, or just that 6 weeks that they're?
So the challenge we're having is that most of our mock council events land within a period of probably 2 months, and that's about half of it. And this would be someone that needs slightly last minute, not last minute, we have a couple of weeks of notice, but daytime availability to join in to be the second person for mock council. They are challenging to facilitate as just one person, but it is during the school day. So currently, Councillor Johannesson is the primary second person and Councillor Ostindi is the alternate. So yeah, really ultimate, we wouldn't see anyone after the spring finishes.
Yeah, okay.
So really replacing someone for the rest of this term, and then if that works back in your schedule in October when we reassess that.
Yeah.
We don't tend to get any, of course, we're not going to get any over the summer, and we don't get any generally in September.
Yeah, so next year is fine. My in-laws have just decided to go to Europe for 6 weeks, so yeah, like I said, I could bring the baby, but 2.5 hours is a little bit long. She'd probably be a hit, though, to be honest with you. She's a hit everywhere I go. So, but yeah, so looking for some help on that aspect of things.
Is anyone available to take on mock council as a committee?
Letting others know how often would that be? I have an idea, sort of.
There'll be about, typically we see about 6 a year. It's not substantial, but it is concentrated in a short amount of time. And I will say, yeah, a handful of times. One of the other reasons for changing that appointment is only the committee member who is appointed to that committee can claim for that time, whereas anyone else, it's a volunteer commitment. So wanting to make sure that we've got that portion covered, so that if someone is there, they're able to claim that on claim that time. Anyone? Would it be a possibility of Councillor Ostindi moving into that role? I know you can't for that specific date, and another alternate assigned. It won't work for that date, but may give us an added layer of availability in the springtime.
Jolene, you available?
How do you feel about that, Councillor Ostindi? Not to peer pressure you into it, but.
I can be the main one and then just, yeah.
And then pull in, could someone else potentially be an alternate on that committee?
Because in the end, use Mike. In the end, I can say yes. In the end, we really share the role anyways, so that's the intent of it.
Yeah. The intent is to have two people ideally for it, especially when we get into the tour portion of it. It's very difficult to tour a whole class, and sometimes they join classes without being able to split up that group and actually be able to get them through the spaces in our building. But not all of them. The first one coming up, we're going to them, so they're not necessarily all here either.
What times do you do it?
It's 2.5 hours, so it's either basically the full morning or the full afternoon on most days. And quite often when the schools come, they'll give us some date options, but they will, sometimes they'll come for a couple different classes on different afternoons throughout the week, or they'll ask for part of their school to come in the morning and part for the afternoon on the same day. So it's tough to say. Councillor Iwanicki?
Okay, so what is the sort of lead time then on when you'd have to attend?
Oh, typically 3 weeks. We do have a reasonable amount of notice.
I don't consider that terribly reasonable. I mean, I already have a lot of daytime stuff, so.
You do, yeah.
Putting another one would be.
Councillor Mearns, am I seeing half of a hand?
I just wonder what the dates again were that was needed.
It is March the 12th, I believe, for this first one, but we don't have the other ones scheduled. It's just ensuring we've really got a go-to person to ask as those next ones come in. And we do typically have some choice in that. So if I know who we're working with, we can suggest a few dates or massage to there. We did do that, and then the childcare situation changed, I think, on your end. So this one was previously booked, thinking we had 2 people, but we can work with whoever is on that team to massage the dates. We do just have to get back to them relatively quickly, so that's why going out to all of council every time is not ideal, because we like to get back to them within a day or 2. I don't know the answer to that. I think it's morning. I think it's 9 a.m. Yeah.
Yeah, for God's sakes, I'll just do it.
Councillor Iwanicki, you're willing to be on the team. Councillor Mearns, you weren't.
No, I was just like, I'm gone for at least 2 weeks of that, out of country anyway, so it's like, it doesn't make sense for me to be an alternate.
Great. And we will follow the same process after checking in with those on the committee and the alternate. If we can't find anyone, of course, we'll go ask to council. Ms. Phillips.
It looks like it's council's calendar at 9 a.m., grade 3, is that correct? Yeah,
Yes,
9 a.m.
That's it.
On the 12th.
On the 12th. And you did say for that one, as long as you could duck out early,
Yes.
which works just fine.
Yeah, as long as if it's early, I think I said I have to be gone by 11:30. Absolutely.
We'll be out of there before then, actually, for that one.
My mic's not on.
What you missed was Councillor Iwanicki saying he would love to be a part of this committee. It actually is tremendously fun. So.
I do like the idea. Jeez. I do like the idea. It's just another daytime thing is the struggle.
It's extra fun if your own kids ever ask you to do this for their class. So stay tuned for that. Okay, Ms. Phillips.
I'm just wondering if you will be making a motion so that we, okay, perfect.
Yeah, so.
Just so there's the accountability for the compensation.
So let me just try throwing one out, and Ms. Reynolds, you can tell me if I'm wrong here, but the motion would be to replace Councillor Johannesson with Councillor Ostindi as the primary on the mock council, and replace Councillor Ostindi with Councillor Iwanicki as the alternate for the mock council presentation, or mock council committee. And that is my motion. Any further discussion? No, seeing none. All right, all those in favor? And opposed? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you. Councillor Payne?
Just to add to that, I have my days, I'm good until 10 a.m. and then I'm good from noon until 2. So on days when you're doing it,
Okay.
I could come and help, but I teach between 10 and noon and between 2 and 3:30, so.
So that may work with the after lunch ones. Sometimes they like to walk down on their lunch, and that would get enough of the session. They like to go back around that 2 o'clock anyways, so they have time to get back to class for the afternoons. Awesome, thank you. All right, with that, anything else under council request? Councillor Oostende.
Just to clarify what will happen, we had a group come in on open mic today asking about access to public buildings. I think it's automatic that admin will be seeking out some answers. We don't need to direct them at this point, but I'm raising the question of, as they do, admin does their research, that a little bit of a deep dive could go into the elections acts as well as the MGA. I was thinking those are sort of things that were popping up in my mind as relevant
And I'll just jump
legal
in.
frameworks.
Without a motion, they would not do that deep dive, so we'd probably look, because there's some research involved, for a counselor to follow our notice of motion process. And whoever would like to do that, Ms. Reynolds would be happy to work with you on the wording. And that would come back then for a notice of motion to move that forward at potentially the next meeting.
Yeah, okay.
There's Ms. Phillips.
If I could just comment, we have responded, but my comment to Ms. Morris was that you always have the option to go to council if you're not happy with the direction that administration is taking on this. This is an administrative response based on access and egress within the NextSource building. And that all of our groups have been treated the same way. But council can always direct through policy, correct, right? So as Mayor Hansen said, if there was a notice of motion to bring back or look at opening that up, keeping in mind that if you open it up for one group, and I agree, if you're opening it for one, you open it for all, but that is all. So, you know, let's bring it back to administration, and there's things like, if there's ever a recall, are we setting up a booth in the lobby? So it does open a can of worms when you go political, correct, right? So it's all groups, so it's all or none, and that's where, you know, but for the NextSource, it was, that one particularly was the amount of people in the building. And it's permitted, it's just, you need to rent a room, that's all. But egress was a big challenge because there's so many people in that building, and Ms. Collicutt speaks to it way better than I, so if more information in the future is requested, we could definitely do that.
Thank you. We know how to move forward with that, council. Is there anything else for information we'd like to talk about tonight? All right, we've reached the end of our agenda. Thank you all very much. Meeting is adjourned.